All right. Just a couple of thoughts on the Wake Forest game. Um, I think the disappointment was obviously with the result, but really more, as I said after the game, more about the way we played. Um, no one in this building believes that we're anything but an improved team in terms of our personnel, but that doesn't do you much good when you play as sloppy as we played. And there's never going to be a perfect game, a perfectly executed game, but obviously a lot of room for us to clean up and to put pressure on the opponent. We've talked a lot about better decisions with the ball. We've got a good young quarterback that needs to be able to take some risks, but also needs to understand that there's certain places that you can miss and certain places you can't. There's some times where you're going to take a sack or throw the ball away. We've got a really good punter, and it's not a bad thing to get our punt group on the field. I think experience is a great teacher in this respect, but certainly for them to start their first possession on our 10-yard line was a challenge to our strategy to come out and win the game. It extends to the center snap exchange. A couple of those. Obviously, the punt return, the fumble there was a crucial point in the game where we were just starting to get back the momentum in the first half. Was a hard way to end. That sequence was brutal, and so again, those things are within our control. Possession of the ball is within our control, and in all three phases, we need to be fighting for the ball in this program. I would say the sequence before the half and the goal line sequence were probably the most frustrating on Saturday, and obviously areas that we need to have our attention moving forward. Defensively, I thought we had a plan to force them to run the ball to win, and I thought at times we saw flashes of execution in that respect and strong play. Tackling issues in the second half, those are more fundamental technical. We had guys at the point of attack. We just got to finish plays, and then never force them in position late where they needed to throw the ball. So they were able to lean on the run game late, which I thought was again an inability for us to get back into a competitive back and forth. Two kind of things stood out defensively. One was the third down defense was problematic on their second touchdown drive. There were 4 third downs. Two of them, or two pass interference penalties. One was on a 3rd and 18. Those are opportunities for us to get the ball back to the offense and to again put pressure on Wake Forest. We weren't able to do that. And then 2 backed up sequences where we let them out, and we expect the defense to be able to hold the line, and essentially it's 11 guys playing together, executing what we're called, and again putting pressure on the opponent. So we played against a team whose signature is to play a clean game and to use your mistakes against you, and they weren't perfect either. We were able to capitalize on a couple of mistakes, but just made too many on our end to ever really get back into a back and forth within the game. And so there's a lot to learn from that, and learning is painful and growth is painful, but we own it and we understand it as part of our journey, and we turn the page to UNLV, and this is a team. Obviously Barry Odom is a coach that I have a lot of respect for. He's coached in this league, really good defensive coach, and they run a 3-down 3 safety scheme, and they do it really well. They play hard. They were able to generate a turnover against Michigan, and I felt like challenging them in some aspects. Obviously had a good outing against Bryant. Offensively, they're different, and this is college football now. Every week it seems like you're playing a different style of offense. This is going to be a unique 2-back scheme. There's a lot of unbalance. There's a lot of option. And the quarterback's a good player too. So, we expect a challenge this weekend. That the ultimate challenge for us though is to focus inward first, to clean up our performance, to continue to strengthen our play, and ultimately to manifest the team that we know that we are. which we weren't able to do last week. So with that, I'm happy to open up with questions.
Clark, are there different kinds of mistakes? There's mistakes not caring enough, maybe mistakes when you care too much. I don't know if that's a fair way to ask the question or if it's something else, but two of the things that could be corrected, what did you assign as a culprit there if it's one of those two?
Well, I would never say there's a lack of care. So that's the first thing. And then never do I think learning how to win and learning how to play consistently, learning how to, again, dictate terms. I don't want to sound too repetitive, but I'm repetitive with our team. We're still at times looking across the field and not taking control and taking power that we have and applying it to the field. We're looking across the field to see if our performance is good enough, and we're measuring that off who we're playing against rather than, again, finding the strength of our program and applying it to the field. And those conversations are remnant, Chris, of last season. I felt like coming out of the Wake game, and just as I've unpacked it and reviewed it, it felt a lot like the South Carolina game to me last year. In the conversations we had on the back end of it were very similar. Now, maybe that means we're like 6 games ahead this season, right? We're having those conversations now. That's how I choose to believe. So you look at the mistakes in the game, and you talk about decisions with the ball and snap decisions. There are focus elements to that. There are standards over circumstances elements, meaning the ability to hone in no matter what the context for the snap is, whether I've got a zero nose or a pressure look, or it's 2-3 techniques and no one's blitzing, to get the snap on target is something that we have control over. We need to do that. With the quarterback play, again, I don't want AJ out there overanalyzing every throw he makes, but certainly he's got to recognize moments where he's trying to force something, or sometimes I feel like where there needs to be a little more urgency with the throw. Those are things that I do believe take experience to learn, but those are also things that we need to be pushing hard because we have to evolve forward there. When I look at the first third down, he missed an inside fade where he can't miss it, and it's a tough mistake to make in that moment, and ultimately put our defense in a really hard spot. I think that we responded well there, and particularly after the delay, we held the line and held them to 3. The punt return at the end of the half, another mistake. I think there's a couple things. We get beat cleanly by the gunner, and we have to make a decision, fundamentally, technically, at the end of that snap, to vacate the block, to leave it to Will to navigate. Obviously, as Will feels traffic, he's got the ability to put his hand up and fair catch it. If he makes the decision to field that ball, which I love the fact that he pressed into it to field it. I think that is a huge play. But once you field it, you got to secure it. I mean, that's not, that is, again, the fundamental technical aspect of ball security. And so obviously that's a huge moment where, we just scored a quick strike touchdown, had pressure on him, went out and got a stop. And I think we're in a position there to build to a lead there. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. So again, I don't think any of these are a failure of the heart or of caring. I think there's certainly detail embedded in that. I think there's also focus embedded in that. But also just a respect for what it takes to win. And one of the hardest things as a player and a coach on game day is, no matter the emotions that you feel, no matter the momentum of the game, it's this commitment to do small things well, to step onto the field and get to your technique faster than the opponent. Those are the things we talk about. And that to me, those are the signatures of what good teams do. And we weren't able to do that Saturday. The DPIs, there are some times where we're going to talk about those and say, that penalty shows up. I thought on Saturday it was again sloppy fundamental technical play, and anytime I say sloppy fundamental technical play, that's not exclusively a player issue. I mean, how are we teaching those things? How are we training those things? How are we drilling those things as coaches? How are we demanding them? Those are the places we go. And I really don't know that our performance changed that much from game 1 to game 3. I really don't look at it and say, we played a vastly different game. We played against an opponent that was ready to challenge us and to capitalize on our mistakes. And in that sense, I think it's just, again, driving home the message that as we move, I think there are plenty of games on our schedule. I told the team there's 9 wins out there for you. We got to go make it happen. We got to go attack it. But in the end, no one's going to hand you a game, and we have to clean up our play. We love the fact that we've improved our skill and improved our length and improved, our physical presence. But you still got to play good football, and we weren't able to do that. Long-winded answer there, Chris, but hopefully hits somewhere near the mark.
How's the confidence of center Julian Hernandez been after some shaky snaps on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, Julian's fine, and I mean, we talked about it. I mean, I've talked about it with him a number of times and with the team. I mean, it's not something. Again, we all have to accept responsibilities for our roles. I mean, I'm gonna make decisions in my role that aren't always popular or could be second guessed or questioned, and everyone on the team and in the program has that responsibility or that obligation. His job is to get the snap back to the quarterback, and he's done it a bunch of times over his career. So we don't see this as a problem that's going to extend. I thought Wake, and I mentioned this ahead of time, they were good with their movement, their pressures. They covered him up, and I think playing against a zero creates some pressure on the center, but that's not an excuse to not get the ball back. I don't expect. He's been fine. His jaw's set. He's focused on UNLV, and I expect for him to come out and have a good game on Saturday.
Injury-wise, how's Junior Uzebu, and are there any new injuries to report?
Junior was able to do some work today. I would say he's day to day. It was positive to see him out there. DeRicky made it out of the game okay. What a tough kid and a warrior for our program. He was able to be out there today with us. I expect for him to be available on Saturday. Savion Riley is dealing with an upper body injury day to day. And other than that, I think we were, there were some bumps and bruises, but nothing that was holding anybody out today. Christian James, I'm assuming that we might go there, so I might as well go there. He's getting back into football activity. He traveled with us to Wake. We were hopeful to get him back. As we get going in SEC play. I want to leave that open. Also, don't want to guarantee it. We need to see how he does this week, but we are getting closer there, and so without any setbacks, hopefully in the next week or two, he'll be back with us full go.
It looks like on the depth chart you moved Issa to nose tackle, Bradley Mann to 3 technique. What were the reasoning of switching around those players?
Well, they are interchangeable parts. I mean, Issa can play a number of positions. Bradley can play a number of positions, and so there's no real method to that madness. It's just a matter of kind of slotting them in where we think they'll see the most time. But those guys are steady contributors for us, and will continue to be.
I want to ask about your defensive scheme. We saw against Hawaii, you had trouble stopping the pass. You go to 6 DBs a lot of the game. I guess it got a little better in that respect at times. You tried to force Wake to throw. You got burned a little bit up front. How do you manage that in terms of what's our best look going forward in terms of scheme, and is that just going to be opponent dependent?
It's opponent driven. We want to try to force the team we're playing to play left-handed, and so I want to be clear. The scheme itself, you never line up with a defense that doesn't have an answer to a run play or a pass play. What that answer is, again, runs that go for 4 yards and it's 2nd and 6, to me, you can live with that, right? You can say over time, no different than do you press or play off at corner. I mean, if you give them the access, they're going to take it at times, and sometimes that means that's going to be 4 or 6 yards on a throw, just ripped into the boundary. When you press it, you're taking the throw away, but you're giving them the 50-50 ball or the chance at it. So you want to spread the hard down around. There was nothing about the run scheme that was meant to, surrender. I think it was 288 yards. That's never the design. And when I looked at that, there was never a point in time where I said, wow, this is really unsound. Obviously, that would never be a formula for us to take into a game plan for Saturday. What I saw was, at times, Wake's scheme in the run game does challenge you. It's slow, and you have to have patience with it. They manipulate the way you fit the edges by being so slow, and so sometimes they're able to pop out and find yards on the perimeter. And then there's sometimes where we have unblocked players at the point of attack, and we don't finish. On the 74-yard run, we had the ball wrapped up probably for a 3-yard gain, and he bounced off the tackle, and we didn't have a leverage player into the boundary because the corner had folded over the top, and the safety was down. And so ball gets on the sideline, we don't knock it out of bounds, we down it on the goal line. It's like, and I say that, Chris, just to say that's to me where we went from, hey, let's force them to run it to win, to really, to me, not executing the design of the defense. And I believe if you're looking at that stat sheet and saying it was 150 to 175 yards, it's still a good day rushing for them. But what we're talking about then is a game where we played within our structure. We forced them to go the long, hard way, which forces them then to execute. And the other thing it says is that we played in a competitive game where, they have to throw it also. We got to the point where they had 2-score leads, and running the ball became something that they could do to shorten the game. And that's where we weren't able to be complementary enough to really weaponize the approach.
When you have players that make the kind of mistakes that, were made in the Wake game, whether that's the bad snaps or the PI penalties, turnovers, things like that, what's the balance between, holding them out versus giving them leash to try to correct those mistakes?
Well, that's the challenge, right? We want to be. I mean, first of all, again, let me go back just to say we'll never play a perfect game, and there will never be a time where we look up and say, we didn't make any mistakes today. And so we have a belief in the people that we put in positions on the field that they're going to go out and execute to the best of their ability. And we also have seen evidence to counter the one-off bad plays with some really good plays. And so we want to have patience and give people plenty of room to make mistakes on the field. When it comes to things like not running the right route or not communicating the right way up front, when your play as an individual starts to impact the other 10 players on the field, there has to be some attention given to what's the best chemistry or what's the best formula that we can have here in terms of personnel that gives our team the best chance to execute. But those are conversations we have every day, and in the end, our players that have earned the right to be on the field will be on the field. You might see a guy that's taken 70 snaps end up with 40 as his performance is less clean. And then those guys that kind of take advantage of the extra time they're getting if they are going out and making plays. That's how you see the balance of plays change. But we want to be patient with our team, and we want to make sure that we're coaching them to play better first. We have to take ownership as a staff, and make sure that we're putting them in good positions too. Those are the two things for us that come first. And in time, we make the decision on who's best in any given moment.
On Saturday, it looked like you were using, primarily Patrick Smith at running back, but then Cedric Alexander in kind of a short yardage. Is that a strategy that you think, you might continue to use going forward?
No, it had less to do with that necessarily. I mean, we came back out of the break and actually said he was getting a bunch of carries there early. Cheeks had a couple nice runs and broke the long one. That has to do with hot hand and what the flow of the game is. And one thing that's becoming clear, I mean, there's a few positives that we pull, being that it is a journey. You can't just bury yourself in the negative emotions of the game, which there are plenty of those. But you also have to look and say, okay, look, what are the things you're learning about your team that are positive too? It's a long season, and we have to grow from mistakes and grow from a bad result. But and I think one of the positive things that I've seen in the last couple of games is some really strong plays from our running back position, where maybe we're not blocked quite right, but they're making someone miss. They're jumping over a blocker on the ground, and on Saturday when we were able to block Wake in their movement, we ripped a long run which just finished short of the goal line, and unfortunately we weren't able to punch it in from there. But I'm excited to see those guys continue to grow, and obviously I think as that unit up front strengthens play too, I think the run game can be something that we breathe life into.
Explosive pass plays were a big thing for your offense. Has that become maybe a little bit bigger part of things going forward?
In terms of just for the offense, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's something you're going to look for a little bit more, take more shots downfield with some of the plays you've made.
Yeah, we and again I go back to just that we had a couple of called too, and they weren't necessarily shot plays, but they were going to be chunks that we one of which was a 1st and 10 that I think went to 2nd and 9. We just dumped the ball off to Jaden. We had a receiver run the wrong route. Will Shepard's wide open on an over route, and we had another where we had a receiver fall down. We believe in our pass game, and we believe in AJ's ability and the receiver's ability to make plays. I think, again, you look at London's performance continues to strengthen. I think he had four targets, 4 catches for over 100 yards and a touchdown. I thought the ball that he called, the throw and the catch there, I believe that was our last score. That was a really impressive play. Junior Sherrill's a guy that I thought flashed. He had a couple of targets and flashed. So you're starting to see some young players emerge there too. I think Jaden McGowan has had a really consistent season so far, and has done really great things with the ball in his hand. And you can just so clearly see the work that he's put in the offseason to become a more dependable down and down out player. And then obviously, Will's been a weapon in the red zone, and so that pass game is certainly something we believe in, certainly something we want to continue to feature. We just we got to make sure that we're taking the shots when they're there. We know where to miss. We understand that that throwing the ball away or taking a sack, those can be good plays for us too. And every possession needs to end with a kick. Whether that's an extra point, a field goal, or a punt. We cannot give away free possessions to the opponent.
Anything else?
Yes. So you mentioned UNLV's unique offense. How do you defend that?
Well, there's nothing. I think last week we employed like a different kind of style that we have in our package: 3 safeties, 3 down linemen. You don't go to those extremes. This is primarily an inside zone scheme that has quarterback read elements, that has option elements, and they have a little bit of gap scheme too with pullers. But we won't need to go too far from what our base is. It's more about how you key and diagnose and how you make sure you're fitting in the proper leverages. If we start popping gaps, if we start again not reading our key, you're going to create space for the run game for them, and that's certainly a way to breathe life into that offense. Michigan did a really good job of keeping them off schedule. And, the quarterback's got a good arm too, but I think that, they're going to look to establish that run game early, and we got to make sure we're in the right positions to defend it.
All set? Thank you.
Thanks, guys.